Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. And this one, you're going to want to sit and take it all in, because with me today is another farm kid from the Peace Country who has left the farm, started a business, started many businesses. And so we're going to get into that and his backstory. But first, I want to welcome to the show, Pierce Krol. He is the founder and CEO of Insurely. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lance. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. So right off the hop, before we get into all the rest of the stories around the businesses that you've been involved with, I want to know, with your, what has it been, 18 years of entrepreneurial experience, something like that?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. What would you say are the three things that every entrepreneur needs to know?
Okay, well, let's get right into it. Hey, shall we?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think the top three things for me and that I would like to share with your audience is number one, embrace failure. Failure has morphed for me over the years, and it sounds counterintuitive, but failure has been pretty great in my life, because there's a lot of things that I've tried that I've failed at, and that could be anything from, say, marketing to hiring to lines of revenue. But what I found was really cool was out of that failure rises something pretty unique. And I mean, I can go in later about some of the failures, and my existing business aren't failures, but things have changed. You've tried things. So one, embrace failure. We've got a rule actually in our current company where we welcome failure. You have permission to fail in our company. That means you're trying something hard enough that you have the chance to fail. So number one, failure. Number two, for me, it's always been continuous learning. I was sharing before we hit record here, I'm not a Harvard graduate by any means. I just work as hard as I possibly can. And part of that was learning, continuous learning, books that I found helpful, other people, mentors, and just by learning, like the business world is so dynamic with new technologies and trends and strategies all the time. So as an entrepreneur, you just have to keep up with that. And that's challenging to do. So continuous learning. Number three, kind of going back to the work ethic, for me, it's always been that resilience piece, which is the failure, and then persistence. And that's really been my secret. I've never claimed I'm smarter than the next person, but what I will claim is that I will work harder than you. So I've always leaned on that strength. It's worked really well for me. It's backfired at times too, when you just try to work yourself out of a problem. But work really hard. And a guy once told me, and it stuck with me, but there's a big difference between 9 to 5 money and 7 to 7 money. And whether that's positive or not, it's been a bit of a mantra. So work hard. You can overcome a lot of obstacles if you're just willing to put the effort in.
Yeah. And I said at the beginning when I introduced you that you're a farm boy as well. And that was one of the things that I always thought I brought to the table, or that came with me, I guess, as an entrepreneur, is from the farm, you're always around entrepreneurial people. I mean, to keep a farm going, you're doing a lot of different things, but so you have that mindset, but the work ethic was always something that I was super proud of, that I was able to draw upon that. And so I echo you in the sense of, like, I'll outwork you, man. Like, and if there's something that somebody else is doing in the marketplace, it's like, if somebody else has figured it out, I can damn well figure it out too. It's that,
sure.
I don't know, flexibility. And that's one of the things, again, on the farm, where it's like when that tractor breaks down, you're out in the field and you don't have parts, you got to run to town for it, and they don't have any or whatever. Sometimes you just have to figure it out to get that crop in or get it harvested or whatever the case might be. And so that, I think, is unique about us farm kids. But
I agree with you. I mean, I can remember times as a kid where you're in a piece of machinery or it breaks down, and you want to just, and then necessarily have cell phones at the time, you'd pull over and go, geez, I'd love to call the mechanic, but then, you're calling yourself, right? And in my case, it was myself and my father or whoever. But so, fixed it. You're the entrepreneur, you're the janitor, you're the everything, right? Like everything between. Yeah. So totally get it. Love the work ethic that came from it, though.
Yeah. No, I really like what you were saying in terms of that you enable your staff to fail. You give them that permission to fail. And so that is, if I would imagine the idea behind that is, if you're if you're not pushing the limits, you're not going to grow as well as you can, either as an individual or the company itself. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're always going to bump into failure when you're pushing, when you're on that edge, right? And so is that the intention there? Is it's like you try to get that as close to that edge as you can. Obviously, you don't want the failure, but if you do fail, that's okay because we've learned a lot from that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it has a lot to do with it because when we're looking at our company and our people, I think it's a couple of things. But one of the major ones was I've noticed that if if our employees are afraid to fail, then you're not pushing the envelope, so to speak. But then you're not taking risks. You're not trying to better. You're not trying to improve something. You're just trying to do status quo. And status quo is great in a lot of businesses. But what
Yeah.
we're trying to do and what we're trying to build for a lot of like-minded individuals, you need to push the envelope a little bit. And so by allowing our staff to fail, they can go and try something. Don't get me wrong, we're not just winging it here, but if
Yeah.
there's something go, hey, this has the potential to be really hard and we might not hit the mark, then I would rather try that because I think for us, we would rather shoot for the mark and miss than have that what if in the back of your mind. And I know as well as probably you, if you don't try it, guarantee you 60 days from now, someone just did that idea and you're, you know what, we should have pushed just slightly harder. So we're always trying to push the envelope, whether that's a marketing or revenue or something along those lines. And I think, I think I ripped that off from was it some NASA or Google or something. And I just was really fascinated by you can get a group of people together that are all pulling the oar in the same direction and really trying to push the envelope. Magical things can come of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's exactly where, you look at guys like Elon Musk,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that guy lives in a place of comfort around failure. Like he is pushing those teams that he has in all those different companies right to the brink of disaster, I think, in a lot of respect, right? And that's how you get the unicorn. That's how you get
For
those
sure.
massive wins, is if you can live in that area.
Yeah.
Without it, you're never going to have those big, massive home runs.
Well, and yeah, I mean, to follow that too, like what I've found, and I know some of this I ripped off from NASA for sure, but Elon Musk is a great example. But when we're looking at failure, we're not looking from like start to finish, and it's this huge divide. Like a lot of things we're doing in our company, we're kind of picturing that getting from let's say to get to the moon, right? You don't go into NASA and say, okay, how do we get this thing off the ground when we hit the moon? It's like, how do we get this thing stood up? How do we get liftoff? How do we get it to upper atmosphere? And so you start chunking it. And so we
Yeah.
don't mind pushing the limits in those chunks because you're going to fail, but you're going to figure it out and something beautiful is going to come from it. So no, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, completely. Okay, so now Insurely is the business that you've been growing for the last few years. Tell me a little bit about it and what problem you're trying to solve with this particular business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Insurely is a digital online insurance brokerage operating in Canada. So, essentially, we're not trying to change consumer behavior. That's changed, and we're trying to get the insurance company or the insurance industry to keep up to it. And what that really means is we're digitizing the experience. So, you can go online, enter some information about yourself, your property, if you're trying to insure a home or a condo or something like that. And then we have connections with insurance companies where we pass rates and coverages back and forth. Ultimately, you're able to pick the coverage you want in real time, buy it via a debit card, credit card, whatever you wish, and then the policy is purchased and it sends all the documents in an email instantly. So this entire process takes 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So the problem we're solving, to be honest, as much as the technology moves so much faster than, say, our competitors, our peers, the problem we're really solving, Lance, is customer service. And I always get this weird face when I say that, but we truly mean it. By having the technology do what it's able to do, we can focus on an amazing customer experience. And I mean, at our company, customer service is North Star, and it sounds like a pitch, but it's really not. We live and breathe it, and we're so like we can deliver on it because we're not spending all of our time in the mundane side of it. So that's the problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely brilliant because I mean that is one of the most frustrating things when you're dealing with something that is really a commodity for the most part. It's just it's punching in the numbers, right, and figuring out where you fit within the tables, and everything is kind of set up already. And so you don't need somebody to guide you through that on the phone necessarily and take the time or back and forth trying to book that meeting with the insurance advisor. Just being able to fill something out online in today's world is like it's table stakes. And yet there's so many of these industries that are so slow moving. I mean, COVID pushed a lot of them into the light a little bit, for sure, because it was a necessity. But you guys were, doing this well before that. So, was that born out of a frustration that you saw happening? Because as I understand it, you had a previous bricks and mortar company that was not, I guess, focused on this
Mhm.
customer experience being so tailored and easy to use online.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the Insurely piece, like when we're looking at it, we're really looking at going our industry, where are the friction spots? And that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
overcome. And we've overcome a lot of the friction. And really the premise behind Insurely, again, we're not changing consumer behavior, but to kind of go back so that we can go forward. Prior to Insurely, I had brick and mortar insurance companies, and the whole story of Insurely, actually, oddly as it is, we had a company, we bought a few companies, amalgamated them together. We were doing quite well. And I built this building, a purpose built building. I thought I was going to be in it forever. It was a shrine to our company. It was amazing. And so
Yeah.
we had this 2-story entryway, lobby, if you will. And my office was on the second floor, overlooked the front, the lobby. I was very proud of it. And I would notice that every day between 12 and 1 and 1 to 2, there would be people sitting in our lobby on our couch waiting to buy personal insurance. And the process would take all of their lunch hour and another day or two after because of all the manual entry. And I'm sitting here going, I'm working through my lunch. It's showing up off of like Uber, and I'm ordering my presents off Amazon, but yet someone's got to drive across town in their lunch hour to sit in a stranger's office. I'm going,
Yeah.
this is so crazy. But insurance is one of those industries that's very slow to respond in some realms. And so we thought, you know what? I love what we've done here. I think we've accomplished our goal, what I set out to initially. I think it's time to pivot and create another company that's really based around technology and kind of elevating that customer service, if you will, and on a move forward basis. And so that's really the story of Insurely. It was just based off this necessity of even looking at, because I essentially I didn't throw a bomb, I sold it, but you threw kind of this arrow at this existing business going, I think we can do this differently, and I think we can do this better. And just
Yeah.
pivoted and really in the course of the year and started down this new path, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because as an entrepreneur, I'm a bit of a tinkerer, right? I
Mm-hmm.
like to look at the structure of my business and tinker and move things around and try to find greater efficiencies or bring in a different service or do something that's going to enhance the success of our business, but also the way that we can respond to clients and so on. So there's always something that can be adjusted and tweaked and
Mm-hmm.
so on. And I think you're somebody who looks at the status quo and goes, that's not good enough. But yeah, like you kind of threw a bomb into it
Right.
and just blew it up and said, I'm going to do this completely different. And that's fascinating to me, where it wasn't something that you thought, you know what, I'm going to try to evolve my current one. I'm going to sell that and start over. Can you talk to me
Mm-hmm.
about that a little bit? Because I'd imagine that must have been kind of scary, but and difficult as well to kind of give up on what was your baby, really, right?
Yeah, no, actually, that's a great question. Looking back now, it's a little bit easier. I mean, hindsight's right, but the at the time, the reason that I didn't want to digitize our current business is because digitizing a current business at times can be very, very challenging. And I think there's other founders that I've talked to are experiencing that very thing. Going, the world is moving really quickly. The last 3 months have been wild, let alone having a company that's maybe 3, 5, 10 years old. And so for me, I thought, what, I think there's opportunity in selling the company that I currently had to a competitor and starting this new entity and building it from scratch. And what's really hard about building a company from scratch is the fact that you got to start over and build something from scratch. And
Yeah.
the second time around is quite interesting because you kind of look at yourself in the mirror and go, okay, well, hopefully that first one wasn't all about luck. Let's try to do this again, right? And so
Right.
we got off the ground and we ended up just having a plan, sticking to it. Digitizing was, in some ways, it wasn't distracting because you didn't have an existing business that you were trying to mold. You just took this net new, but in the same breath, net new has no revenue, so that makes it challenging in itself as well. But it seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the entrepreneurial journey from starting that company to exiting it was fascinating. but it felt necessary in order to move forward with what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and what you just said there in terms of, uh, you know, that I don't know if it would be inertia or just the structure, the culture, everything that is tied to that entity itself, to then get it to pivot and to do the things as quickly and to evolve, and to take on, push the limits of failure and everything else. It's really difficult to shift
Mm-hmm.
the culture of an existing organization. And I think we're seeing that actually in live time right now with Google as an example with AI, right? So they're the ones who invented a lot of the AI that's
Mm-hmm.
being used, and yet they seem like they're trailing right now Open AI because uh, Open AI didn't have, the burden of this existing business model that was going to potentially be blowing up because of AI. And so they could just jump right into it and take the risks that Google couldn't, because Google had to still at the same time kind of protect their goose egg, their golden goose egg of the ad model of search and everything else, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
I can see where it makes a lot of sense to just be like, okay, this is going to be a totally different culture, a totally different kind of business. It just doesn't make sense to evolve it. You said that you talked to some other entrepreneurs as and kind of got some guidance that way. So, talk to me a little bit about that. As you have been in business and have had multiple different types of businesses, what role does like an advisory board, whether it's formal or informal, or mentors or coaches, play in your development personally as an entrepreneur, but then also professionally as this business entity and taking the advice of others?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's monumental. And to say I've got a close group of, say, business mentors wouldn't necessarily be correct, but I've always been a believer of the proximity is power piece where you're
Mm-hmm.
surrounding yourself with people. And I mean, it takes a certain entrepreneurial mind to be able to have that conversation, and not from an intellect piece, but if you go to a dinner party with a bunch of strangers who don't have business experience, you go, poor me, my life was hard today. They're going, oh yeah, real tough, real tough. And so having that support system. So I do have friends, colleagues I talk to essentially across North America, different industries, albeit, but we bounce ideas of each other because I've found over the years, you generally have very similar problems. It's going to be a limiting belief, or it's going to be, say, HR, employee issues. Again, second guessing, getting into that new revenue metric or something like that. And so I've found huge solace in kind of bouncing ideas off others. But again, I've always been a lone wolf as well. So I listen, and we can share ideas. But I think one thing that's been really powerful for me is the fact that this was probably about 5 years now, I've had the same business coach. And so this business coach for me plays a pretty important role. Half of it feels like psychological, and the other half is really just bouncing these business ideas. But what's really cool about this is it's a neutral party. So I have a recurring meeting where we talk about my company and my challenges. And it often gets to a point where it's not even about business at all. It's about personal beliefs and limitations. And working through those with someone who understands, I think, is incredibly beneficial. And I recommend most people to try and do that, because if you don't have that, say, that support system immediately, you got to find that support system, because business is hard, and it can take everything from you. It can give everything to you, but it can take everything from you. And having that system where you can nurture your ideas. And for me, actually, I want to share, Lance, one story, because there's one thing that keeps
Sure.
popping in my mind as I'm speaking. So this business coach to me, as we were starting Insurely, I, at my point in my life, sold a company, very comfortable, felt like I could do anything in this world, but here I am starting another company from an industry I just left. So I was talking to my business coach. I said, here's the thing. I'm nervous. This is going to take a good amount of money that I'm going to invest in this thing to get it off the ground. And I'm nervous. I'm not sure what to do. And this individual said to me, okay, let me put it this way. You're a betting man. I said, somewhat. And they said, so if you walked into a casino and you're gonna, bet on blackjack, you'd know the rest. And I said, yeah, I would. So, okay, let me ask you this. What's the chance that you're gonna fail? And I said, honestly, I don't know. She give me a number. And I said, oh, well, I'm 70% sure this is gonna work. She goes, okay, perfect. Let's switch it now. You take 70% odds to the blackjack table. How often are you gonna play blackjack? I said, oh, I'm going to stay there all night. She
Yeah.
goes, there's your answer. She's like, if you're going to bet on anyone, bet on yourself. And that's always stuck with me. And as obvious as that is, it was that 10-minute conversation where we went, yeah, thank you. I needed to hear that. I am going to bet on myself. There's a chance, there's failure, and you always know what failure is. And it's bankruptcy, it's not death, it's bankruptcy. And I said, yeah, I'm willing to take that risk. Let's go. And it was a really cool experience. So yeah, I recommend everyone, if you don't have someone, find someone, because when you don't know you need it till you need it.
Yeah, because a lot of times we just don't have that person. Even if you have a partner within the business, it's sometimes really hard to have some of the conversations with the partner. But if you don't have a partner, you literally at times don't have anybody to really talk about some of the challenges that you have and really trying to
Mm-hmm.
work through those. And I love that your coach focuses on both the personal side, it sounds like. So the personal beliefs and limiting beliefs and so on, and the professional and the business and the numbers and that kind of stuff. Like that's a really nice balance to have, because
Mm-hmm.
that is one of, I think, you just said a truth bomb there, which is you got to believe in yourself. Like if you're going to bet on it, bet on yourself. But I think also the biggest limitation that you have is probably yourself as well. And
100%.
so you just have to bust through that thinking sometimes. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
it.
it's funny because that conversation in itself is even morphed over the last 5 years. Like it started with, can I do this, to yes, you can do this, and that conversation. Now it's morphed to like, man, take care of your health. And now
Yeah.
we're morphed into like the spirituality piece of like, why are you doing all this? Take care of yourself, take care of others. And so it's
Yeah.
funny how even the progression yourself, you watch it over a 5 year period when you're essentially documenting it, and you have this reoccurring role in your life. So yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
So tell me a little bit about, from a personal standpoint, entrepreneurship. What do you find the most challenging aspects of being an entrepreneur, knowing that this is your life? I mean, you've been at this for many years, lots of different businesses. So what do you find the most challenging, even at this stage of your career, I guess, or your journey?
Yeah, I mean, my mind wants to pull me in a few different directions, but some of the challenges that I've found lately are one, keeping up to trends. Not that you have to keep up to every trend, but the learning curve is so quick these days. It wasn't that long ago I was trying to take a paper or a company from paper files to paperless, and now we're in this tech company where we are pretty much done developing our AI chatbot that's going to assist us, and you're looking at it going, whoa. So to me, the entrepreneurial journey is not always keeping up with this, but not that we always need to create the next Facebook or what have you, but that is extremely challenging. And so from my role as the leader, we've got great people who have great ideas, but generally I'm always the one to take the first step because we need to drive it. So I find it incredibly challenging to wake up every day with this vigor, this energy, and just plowing through problems and challenges in the world around us, trying to navigate. So I mean, there's lots of challenges, but for me lately, Lance, anyways, that just seems to be that's the challenge. Get up, find an idea. Which idea are we going to chase down? Again, tied back to that failure piece, but just chasing it down. That entrepreneurial journey is so challenging lately.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. The pace of change that AI is going to alone infuse into every industry is just mind-boggling. And this is like what we can comprehend at this moment in time. It's
Mm-hmm.
mind-boggling. But I mean, we just don't know where this is all going to take us. It's going to be quite the ride, I think, and quite the surprise for a lot of entrepreneurs. And so I'm just thrilled to hear that you guys are getting in front of that with your business right now too, because I was at a session that we did workshopping a little bit. Had a couple guest speakers come in and talk about AI, and one of the quotes that was provided is there's going to be two different kinds of companies in the future, right? There's going to be those who embraced AI, and there's going to be those who are no longer in existence. It's not,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's not like you could do one or the other. It is you're going to have to figure out a way to embrace it, and you have to do it quickly because your competition's going to figure it out and eat your lunch if you don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I know companies that still have fax machines, and
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, how do you digitize when you've got that, and then you've got the tech that we've got available to us now? It is, yeah, it's challenging for sure. It's definitely benefiting our company, but it
yeah,
can be challenging. So yeah, keep
yeah.
up to it.
So, what is easier now for you at this stage of your entrepreneurial journey? than what it would have been, say, when you were first starting your first business or the bricks and mortar insurance company that you had? What's easier for you now, having been in those entrepreneurial trenches as long as you have?
I think what's easier, I mean, I trust myself a lot more
Yeah,
now. A lot of these things you start to see patterns. And if you can take a moment to figure out a pattern and know you've been through something similar, like I kind of associate like the gym. Like you start somewhere and I don't know what you're picking up. Let's say you're doing 25-pound weights and you do that for a while, then you're on to 30. So what was once hard becomes easy. And so for the second go around with the business, I've found that some of these patterns, whether that's employees or challenges, are all very different, but they're all very much the same. And I like looking at that because there is challenges that I had 10 years ago that I would give anything to have today. And those were monumentous. And it's so to me, like there's just a big part of the journey now is kind of, using that past experience. And, a lot of it has to do, again, believing in yourself and putting yourself out there. A lot of my limiting belief, I'll go back to the farm kid, to be honest. I can't believe I'll say this, but like a lot of time when I was growing up, I thought of myself as just this dumb farm kid. And that's not against any farmer, but that was my limiting belief of going, I don't really have a skill set. Like I graduated, but I didn't go to Harvard or anything like that. I didn't even go to
yeah,
university. But so that was my belief. So when I started a business, I'm going, okay, like work hard, work hard. I don't know anything else. Whereas now I've kind of made peace with myself going, I am still that dumb farm kid, but I've got a few tricks up my sleeves and a few things I've learned that are helping me kind of move forward as a business owner, as a human being. And so I really like to lean on that piece for sure. But I mean, I've got lots of stories about what was once hard and what's now is easy. I've even wrote myself notes. It's been awesome.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny that like what you're talking about there is kind of that imposter syndrome that we all get struck by, and it doesn't matter what our background is, because I've talked to the Harvard grads actually, and
Mm-hmm.
what they would say is they just didn't have the life experience coming out of Harvard and that. So yeah, they had the MBA and they had all these expectations, or people had expectations upon them, and they felt like they were the biggest imposter in the room because they knew what the textbook said, they knew what the case study results were going to be, but you start trying to apply that in the real world, it's a little bit different, right? And so they always felt like they were an imposter in the room. So I don't think it matters what your background is. I don't think it matters how much experience you have. I was talking to a gentleman actually here last week, actually, and so an entrepreneur local here in Edmonton, and we were having a drink, and he is probably, I don't know his exact age, but I would say that he's well into his 60s. And he said, like, I just feel like an imposter at times. And I was like,
No
what?
way.
How's that possible? You've got decades and decades of experience. And it's just like, I don't think we ever lose it,
I,
actually.
I agree with you. I've seen that myself, and I've often wondered the same thing of going, do we all experience this to some extent? Like, at what point do you cross that finish line and go, I made it, I've got the confidence? Like, I know there's a few people that have this confidence, but for the most part, like this was a couple of weeks ago, I was with a gentleman who's well known, has a pretty good social media following, and he said to me, he's like, man, I'm jealous of what you're doing. And I like look behind me, he's like, me? I said, dude, like you got your life figured out. And he goes, no, like, and there was always that grass is always greener. And then all of a sudden you've
Yeah,
seen like
yeah,
right away, you've seen that imposter syndrome, that fear. And like, it was like, wow, okay, we're similar. You're a little bit better looking at more of a following, but we're very similar. Like it was so cool. So yeah, I think we all go through it. I think we all go through
yeah.
it.
Yeah, completely. Okay, so now when it comes to Insurely, so
Yeah.
you've got goals, you've got places where you want to take this business. So what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge or challenges that you're going to face, say in the next, 12 months, 24 months, to reach that next goal, that next plateau that you're looking for? And how are you going to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, we have two challenges on our roadmap, two very different challenges. One challenge is our connectivity. So we hook up with insurance companies in Canada, and we're able to provide coverages instantly by an API connection, as an
Yeah.
example. So one of our challenges is not that the insurance companies have fax machines in their office; they don't. They're tech savvy. But at the pace that I want to move our tech, some of these carriers aren't moving as quickly, so
Uh,
we can't connect. So we've got an issue where we've got a great distribution model, an amazing product, great service, And we need more companies come on board and adopt this technology so we can all move forward together.
Yeah.
So challenge number one is having these conversations with people of going, you may not see it today, but in 3 years from now, it's going to be very evident this is the way we're going. And,
Yeah.
I always have a conversation. I go, unless you're not betting on the internet, maybe the internet's a fad and it's going to disappear. But I likely think in 3 years. And so that is a big challenge for us, is trying to get these big nationals to look at this stuff and go, hey, we want to work with you. We just got to figure out how to make our tech talk. And sometimes our tech is a lot better. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, you're having to move the industry, really, right? You're kind of dragging them forward in some cases, especially those monster companies that have that resistance, that natural resistance, the inertia that we were talking about earlier. It's
the vendor side is challenging, and then that brings us, the challenge number two for us really is, and again, going down that AI path, where our distribution model is working very, very well, and we have a lot of raving customers. So scale is actually our next challenge that we have identified on our radar. And scale really takes people. In a technological based company, we can overcome some of that. But in insurance, there's certain licensing requirements and things of that nature where we can't go out and hire 50 to 100 bodies. There's certain protocols and parameters we need to get that up and running. Whereas with we'll just call it the AI piece that we're building, we're going to be able to facilitate that journey with this intelligence that knows everything about our business, everything about our products, and can answer every question. So we're trying to stand that up as well to support the scalability. We'll always have human beings in our firm, 100%, majority. And to be honest, a lot of what we do is we call it broker assisted. Live agents touch almost every file, 95% of them, to be honest. But we're going to have this AI piece that's going to help us scale. And I think that's going to empower us. At least that's what the plan is, because that's our challenge. Empower our agents to do more human interactions and not bog us down. So on the roadmap, those are our two big hurdles. And I think we can overcome both, but time will tell, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting to hear that scale. I was a little surprised that was one of your big roadblocks or potential bumps along the way. Because of you being such a tech focused business. And I was just thinking, well, yeah, like the technology is going to be there. That should be one of your least concerns compared to, the plumber down the street who the only way he's going to grow is how to hire more plumbers. Right. So,
sure.
But I see what you mean in terms of you definitely have to have that oversight, and the legislation aspect, the licensing aspect of it is something that is going to limit that ability to scale as quickly, I suppose.
Well, and it's one of those things, like for us, even being, let's just pick, we've got clients in British Columbia, and then on the other side of Canada we've got clients in Ontario and the like. And so like all of these parameters, different rules, different regulations, different time zones, and even in our system, like you can go through and you might stop and have a question about a coverage as an example. And the previous technology that we had was, here's a knowledge base, here's an article, help you out. And then a person reads that for about 3 lines and goes, no, I'm just going to pick up the phone or text or chat you. So now we want to have that AI where it's responsive and has that human language where you can ask, well, what is this? And he goes, glad you asked that. Here's the answer. If you want to talk to us, book now. Here's a meeting link. Call us. And so we just kind of remove that friction. So I think for us, it's going to be an important part of our scaling. And I think we're fortunate that, the plumber may not have the same idea at scale, but I think we're going to use it to our advantage, and I think it's going to be a powerful tool.
So here's a question, kind of put you on the spot here.
Sure.
What is the most expensive lesson you've had to learn along the way?
Oh boy, most expensive lesson.
Yeah,
man, Lance, you know what? I have quite a few lessons. I think I've learned. Okay, let's put it this way. So my personality is very forward, very rammy, very driven. And so I've got countless expensive lessons where I've bought certain companies that I've overpaid for. I skate through the due diligence process because I'm just like, let's get this thing done. So we have some things pop up, some skeletons in the closet there. I won't put a monetary value on that one. I'll use an example. This one's pretty easy, but even building this building, I was building this shrine for this company, and I hired a company and just put a whole bunch of trust into them. And I said, build this thing. And then they'd say, do you want this? Yeah, I want that. I want that. I want that. Never really thought about, I knew we had a budget. I trusted that they were staying inside of it. So we ended up building this building, and 30% over at the end. And so to me, that's just kind of a testament to my expensive lesson. So, and I'll tie this together. This is going to work great, I promise. But so this building was too expensive. It made me feel terrible about my decisions, but that's who I was, right? I'm like, ram it down, like build this thing. I got things to worry about. And at the end, you look back and going, man, if I just would have spent like 10 more hours, I would have saved myself, I don't know, like 300-400 grand or something, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I ended up developing not this mantra. I stole this mantra. I think it was his Navy SEALs, but it's slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so I actually use this mantra quite a bit. I used it this morning in our firm because we've got this deadline that just showed up miraculously. And so I love the line because it really speaks to everything I'm not, which is just perfect. So I feel like I should get it tattooed on my arm or something. But yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. And I think I'm similar to you in that I don't have the patience sometimes.
Right.
And I get caught up in that, like there's so many other things that I need to be focused on. And you kind of trust that other people have their eye on some of those other details. I could just see that on the budgeting part of it with the building. It's like, yeah, they're not going to come to me and ask me if it's going to be outside of the budget. Of course not. So it's like, yeah, you want that? Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, you guys got that all figured out, right?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, even at the Insurely piece, now that you think about it, like, I mean, I've spent probably $1 million more than I planned to on this thing, and we're not done. And so, you go into it naive and go, so the most expensive lesson is just life in general. Like I'm just doing the best I can with what I've got. And some things are more expensive than others. And like I said, though, as long as, failure to me is bankruptcy, I can live with that. I'm not going to die. So let's just keep on following our dreams and believe.
Yeah. So now one of the questions that I like to ask my guests as well is if they could send a letter back in time to their younger entrepreneurial self, what would be in that letter? Now, you shared with me that you actually wrote yourself a letter at some point, and you just came across it not too long ago. So tell me that story.
Yeah, I'd love to. The message to the younger self, to be honest, right out of the gates is just relax. And I'll back that up with an amazing story. But, don't take everything so seriously. It will happen. Keep working hard, believe in yourself, and just shoot for the finish line. And as long as you don't cheap out on yourself, you'll get there. Yeah. But what was really powerful to me, and I'd love to share this story, was, and I don't have the foresight to pick this up, but I wrote myself a letter. So in this previous company, I had a challenge I was dealing with, and 5 years later, I had this note show up. But so kind of went like this. I was sitting on my couch after a really hard week. This is probably about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago now, and a notification in my email pops in. It says you have date night Tuesday, and I said, "Oh shit." What am I celebrating? What's going on? I thought I forgot an anniversary or something.
Yeah.
And I pulled this note up and it said date night. And I looked at it and instantly I forgot that I wrote it. But essentially the note, I wrote it 5 years earlier. And I set it in my Outlook calendar to notify me in 5 years' time. And the note basically said, "Hey, Pierce, you're writing this from your favorite sushi restaurant. You just dropped your kid off. I've got two. I had one at the time. You dropped your kid off at your in-laws, and you're having dinner with your wife, and you're discussing how you're going to overcome this big challenge. This big challenge was essentially buying a partner out, and it was a lot of money at the time. And it said, I don't know how this is going to work out for you, but I'm sure you'll overcome it. Best of luck. Let me know how it goes. Love, Pierce." And hit send. Forgot about it.
Goosebumps, man.
It was so cool. And so it sent me this alert 5 years later. And Lance, I mean it when I say it. It couldn't have come at a better time. I don't know if you believe in fate, but I was having a tough week. And one of those weeks where you sit down and go, what am I really, do I need to be a business owner? Like, is this what I picked? Like, kidding me? And this note popped up and I read it. And immediately I just felt so happy with myself because that problem, I touched on it earlier, but that problem at the time, I can't remember what it was, but it was buying a partner on, and it was an amount of money that today is laughable. And it was everything to me. I remember that clear as day, that amount of money, I've got it amortized over 10 years. How am I going to make these payments? My business can't support it. And I did it. And 5 years later, I'd give anything for that problem. And it was so powerful because in that moment, I said, I wrote myself, obviously, another note. I didn't do it 5 days on the dot, but it was 5, 6 days, whatever it was. And it was the same thing. This is your challenge today. How did it work out? But what's really awesome about that was just that foresight to do it, because I tell a lot now that story. When I tell it, I tell my friends and be like, you are going to overestimate what you can do in 1 year, but you're going to underestimate what you can do in 5 or 7. And that was it. I mean, since that, looking back at it, since that note came out, or since I wrote that note, I've had another child. I've bought a couple more businesses. I've sold a business. I've started another business. And like you look at it and go, whoa! Like if you would have told me then what I'd be doing now, I would never have believed you. And so that note was just powerful in so many different ways. And I recommend it to anyone. Surprise yourself. You'd really be surprised what you can accomplish in a short period of time.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm really curious if you can remember when you wrote the note, what was going through your mind when you wrote it? I mean, obviously you were struggling with what was happening at that point in time, but to write yourself the letter, what were you thinking? What was going through your head?
You know what? To be honest, I think the decision in my mind felt like it was so big that I needed to write myself a note to remind myself that I messed it up on that date if I failed. Like
Uh,
I honestly think that's what it was, because I could be like, oh, never should have stroked that check. But at this, and that was really what it was. It was so pivotal. It felt like that I needed to write myself a note reminding myself whether I made the right decision or the wrong decision.
so
And I
fascinating.
clearly, I think I made the right decision, but
Yeah.
it was so monumental. So again, you look at it and go, so that's why I say when you ask your younger self, it's like, man, relax. Things are going to be hard. You're going to cry. You're going to have tears. You're going to leverage your home, all that good stuff that comes with business ownership.
Yeah.
Pick yourself up, get onto it the next day. And next thing you know, 5 years goes by and you'll be all right.
Yeah, that's awesome. This has been so wonderful, Pierce. I really enjoyed their conversation, the stories that you shared, the experience. I think our audience is going to get a lot out of this episode. So thank you for that. And if somebody wanted to connect with you or learn more about Insurely, how should they do that? Where should we send them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can check me out on Instagram, even at insurely.ca. You'll find a link to me there. Our website, insurely.ca as well. You'll find, if you need to get a hold of me, you can find me on there. But yeah, it was so great to talk to you today. I'm glad we got to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And for those of you who are listening right now and you really enjoyed this episode, you want to check out some other stories of other entrepreneurs who've been in the trenches and are doing the things that you're wanting to do or that you are currently doing, check out our archives over at amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find all these incredible stories. And if you prefer the audio version only, you can find us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms out there, Spotify, Apple, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're there. So until next time, though, everybody have a prosperous day. And thank you once again, Pierce. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, everyone.